Hey everyone, welcome to the RotoGrinders Morning Grind Podcast. I'm your host, Stevietpfl. It's NFL time. It's week 16 Morning Grind breakdown, as you can see on screen if you're watching on YouTube. We have a familiar face to OG listeners. We got my good buddy, Gneiffer07. Grant, what is happening, my friend?
OG listeners, it hasn't even been a full year.
I mean, okay. Me and you did NFL breakdown, I think for 2 or 3 seasons, and that was like 2 or 3 seasons ago. So like OG NFL listeners, I guess if we were gonna like bring up like OGs, maybe it'd been like the Siege coming on and doing the podcast with me.
yeah, that's way back in the day.
Oh yeah.
No, it's good to be back. I also realized I don't have my backdrop on. Got my signed boxing glove with a sock in there that fell in there 8 years ago, and I'm just too lazy to get out.
I see Tiger Woods and who signed the boxing glove? Was it Tyson?
3G, Triple G. I don't know. I won a tournament on DraftKings and got court or ringside seats and went and hung out with Bill Simmons and Dave Chappelle afterwards. It was a good time.
Oh yeah. Was it as good as hanging out with me in California with the Fireball the night before? Was it Fantasy Aces live final or something when we met for the first time?
Yep.
Yeah,
And I was newly into DFS, and I had 3 entries to it, and I did awful. But I probably had a good $600-700 worth of Fireball that weekend, or that one night that I was there.
Yeah, because you weren't there on Sunday, or was it Saturday or Sunday for the final? You had like a wedding or something, and I was like, he doesn't have a wedding; he's hungover.
Yeah, no, I was in a wedding, and they're like, be there at like 8, so I'm wake up at like 7 o'clock, like, oh, I do not feel good. Drive all the way up there, like, yeah, no, we're just hanging out by the pool for the next 3 hours. I'm like, why would you do this to me? Why would you ruin this with me? I could have slept 2 more hours. You said be there by 8.
Yeah, a couple hours of sleep. Do you value sleep more now that you had a kid? Do you value sleep more than ever?
I miss sleep more than ever. I go without it now. I'm like, I could get 8 hours tonight somehow, but I'm going to play video games for 2 hours and do some research.
There you go. All right. Well, we're going to break down the slate like we normally do. Glad to have Grant back. It's going to be fun talking some NFL with him. Very, very, very in touch still. Absolutely crushing over there on Scores and Odds. Has a channel here on the RG Discord as well, where he posts almost all of your bets, right? I know you post a lot of them, a good majority of them.
Yeah, I mean, like 90% of them. There's occasionally where I throw one in. I'm like, I'm not near my computer. It's too hard to copy and paste over, and the game starts in 5 minutes. But yeah, anything not live is pretty much up there.
Yeah, there you go. All right, let's get into it and have some fun and break this one down. This is a really good slate. I know it's only 9 games, and we have like some games Saturday. We have like 3 games on Monday for like Christmas slate. But overall, I think this is a really strong slate. We get started with one of the best games on the slate. It's Detroit at Minnesota, 46.5 total here. Detroit, a 3-point favorite. Let's talk about these Lions. Minnesota's defense has been playing good here recently. They've done a great job stopping the run all season. What do you like here for the Lions?
For the Lions, I mean, Brown and Goff, I'd say, are my 2 go-tos here. I mean, it's a little bit so. Over the last few years, Detroit has been really good. I know there's in Minnesota, but still in a dome. Jared Goff in a dome is entirely different. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I don't expect to have a lot of people on him, like probably a decent amount, but he's going to get those dump offs when they're blitzing at such a massive rate. Pretty much, I think they're still highest in the league in blitz rate this season. But Amon-Ra is going to get just a boatload of targets, probably Laporta too. I mean, this is going to be a good high-scoring game. We'll get to the picks later, but I think this game is going to be very high-scoring here. I know that Mullins didn't look great in his last outing. He got lucky in a lot of things, but he's going to be chucking the ball. I mean, he may turn the ball over multiple times, but that's only good for offenses. But Amon-Ra and Laporta are both going to probably be in for heavy volume in this spot. I don't know if I don't have a problem with taking a shot on Gibbs, taking a shot on Montgomery. I know Gibbs has been very efficient over the last 6 weeks, but that's probably going to turn around at some point. He hasn't had the most volume in the receiving game in the last couple of weeks. David Montgomery not really getting it as much as he was. So rushing game, probably stay away a little bit, but the passing game, I think might go over a little bit overlooked, and I'm really liking the three main guys.
Yeah, I'm with you on St. Brown and Laporta. I think this is just a phenomenal spot, like Jared Goff in a dome. The other name that I want to throw out there is Jamison Williams. His snap rate continues to climb. The targets continue to climb. They're designing plays for him. So he's really cheap on DraftKings. He's sitting at 3,700, 7 targets last week, and played the most snaps he's played all season. It's finally happening. This guy is extremely talented. He was drafted as like a top-end wide receiver. It just gives Jared Goff another option. So as far as the running backs, if I was going to play one of them, it'd be Gibbs. I think that Gibbs has higher upside in like the passing game in this matchup than Montgomery. But honestly, they might use Montgomery to block a lot here. But like you said, Minnesota loves to pressure the quarterback. Minnesota side, Nick Mullins, he was okay in that game. Like he played fine. We'll just call it fine. Cincinnati just played better. Mullins threw for 300 plus yards. DFS wise, he was 5K and put up 22 fantasy points. We'll take that all day long. He's 5,300 here. Detroit's defense started the season really strong. They've been a lot worse down the stretch here. Like you, I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. Talk to me here about the Vikings.
Oh, yeah, I love pretty much everything in this offense. We'll see if Madison ends up going. If not, Ty Chandler, probably still too cheap there at 5,600. But I don't do you think that many people are going to play Jefferson? I mean, we currently have him projected for over 20%, but it's an interesting spot having Mullins throw the ball to him. Like I said, Detroit in domes have been very high scoring. I know it's mostly mostly at home, but it's an entirely different game playing Detroit in a dome. Mullins, he's going to sling the ball, likely going to be trailing in this game here. I see Jefferson potentially in for a big game. If he's going to be super heavily owned, I see a pivot to Addison. Addison has been getting a boatload of touchdowns this season. Still got 6 targets, had over 100 receiving yards last week. Him and Hawkinson are kind of the pivot over from Jefferson, but you can fit 2 of them in there with Mullins, honestly. He's 5.3K. He's not that expensive. If you want to roll with them and bring it back with Amon-Ra, it might be a little tough, but you can probably get Jefferson, Mullins, and Amon-Ra, or Addison, Mullins, Hawkinson, and Amon-Ra all in the same lineup. I'm going to be stacking this game up every which way, assuming that everyone isn't on it, which is a distinct possibility. But if the ownership isn't too ridiculous, I am definitely all over the 3 or 4 or 5, whatever, main guys for Minnesota, depending on if Madison ends up playing. But definitely the receiving and passing game.
Well, they did. There was a report that came out that said that even if Madison comes back, O'Connell said that Chandler's going to be the guy moving forward. And I think we saw the explosiveness from Chandler this past weekend. Madison just hasn't had that this year. So it'll be interesting what Chandler's ownership looks like if Madison is active and like if we believe the coaches talk or not. He's cheap at 5,600. I think we could potentially take a shot regardless of who's in, who's out. Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, they're all great plays. Tight end, like I want to pay up for tight end on this slate. Usually we're looking for like cheap tight ends, but like Laporta, Hawkinson, McBride, Ingram, Njoku, Ferguson, they're all in great spots. So I think this is just a really good tight end slate. And I think that overall, I'm going to be paying up quite a bit for tight end, including these 2 guys in this game. We move on. We got the Colts and the Falcons, 44.5 total in this game. Atlanta is a 1.5 point favorite. I mean, looking at this game, I really like this game. The reason I like this game is Ritter's not playing. I mean, they're bringing out Heineke again. When Heineke when he started, he chucked, and I think that this game has way more upside if we're going to have a Falcons quarterback chucking. So starting with the Colts side, Jonathan Taylor, full practice. He's going to be back here. Thank God. I'm so glad that I don't have to play Zach Moss this week. We'll start with that. I think Pittman is on the doubtful side of questionable. That hit was awful. It was a big hit. We'll see if he plays or not. I mean, if no Pittman, Downs and Pierce look really good price wise. Jonathan Taylor 7,200. If he's going to get a full workload, looks interesting. Minshew kind of doing his thing. Like, you got to beat Atlanta with the passing game. Talk to me here about the Colts.
Yeah, this is another spot where I have a lot of interest in a lot of different guys, especially if Pittman doesn't end up playing. I mean, obviously we haven't gotten to Atlanta yet. I think he's cheap, so you can stack this up a million different ways, but Minshew's not a bad play either. I mean, we've seen him have some upside. I know that they tend to scheme based on the opponent. Atlanta obviously being much worse versus the pass than versus the run. They're probably going to be airing it out a decent amount. We've seen Minshew throw 35, 45 times, multiple different times this year, and then throw 20s a lot of different times based on matchup. So this is a great spot here, and it's such an easy way to stack up if Pittman's out. I mean, you've got Downs and Pierce probably going to be the main two guys. I don't know if I really want to go with Granson. I mean, he's cheap, but don't really have much upside with him unless he catches a long bomb. So the offense is going to be fairly concentrated in the fact that it's going to be the receiving game to cheap wide receivers and Jonathan Taylor in the rushing game. So I'm more apt to use the receiving game, and it just makes it super easy. I mean, if you really want to throw in a guy like DJ Montgomery, if Pittman's not playing either, I mean, he's super cheap, 3.3K, had 4 targets last week, only threw the ball 28 times. We're expecting 40 throws. Not going to surprise me if he gets 6 targets at 3.3K. That's super cheap, and he's going to be on the lower end of ownership compared to Downs and to Pierce.
I love the Montgomery call. Just someone that, like, if he does get the playing time, he's trying to prove something. So he's super cheap. And I don't love the tight end situation. I've talked about it a lot this year for Indianapolis. Granson will have good games from time to time, but like then he'll disappear. They'll use like Ogletree and Mo Alley Cox in the red zone. So like I think the tight end situation for the Colts is just something to avoid. So taking one of these wide receivers or 2 of these wide receivers and pairing it with Minshew. But I like the other side of this game. Taylor Heineke, 4,800 here, coming out chucking. We know that like the coaching staff here is on the hot seat for Atlanta. They have been really bad this year. I think Drake London at 5,100, we just absolutely load up. Like he's too cheap. He's a prop that I really like this week. I just love Drake London in this spot.
Yeah, Drake London's definitely a solid guy. I don't mind playing Pitts there at 4K. Heineke is an absolutely fantastic play at 4.8K. I know that we haven't seen Atlanta put up really many big games from the QB position. Ritter did it once or twice. But Heineke, he can sling the ball. It's not a terrible matchup. I know the Colts are easy to run against. I know that Atlanta wants to run at one of the biggest clips in the league. It's definitely a good idea to bring back Jonathan Taylor with the Atlanta passing game. But the guy that's really standing out to me, we talked about paying up at tight end. Jonnu Smith, the one game that he played with Heineke, I think he had 100 receiving yards in that spot and a touchdown. I know a lot of it was one bomb, but he still had 6 targets. Other 2 weeks where Heineke played a little bit, he didn't get a target a ton, so we can't fully rely on that. But he's been solid for the majority of this season. I know he hasn't been great in the last few weeks, still put up 8.1 points last week, but so cheap at 2.9K. Jonnu Smith is actually probably my favorite target in this receiving game, but it's not hard to fit him, Drake London, and Heineke into your offense or into your lineup and just spend up everywhere else, because that's not an expensive 3-man stack. And that has potential to get you, 45 points there between those 3 guys, maybe more. It's beautiful.
I will tell you, though, Drake London was not playing the game that Heineke started against Minnesota week 9. So, I mean, I tempered my expectations a little on Jonnu. I saw that as well. I still think at 2,900, he's worth taking some shots because Heineke might check down a little bit more than Ritter. But Drake London was out week 9. So just temper those expectations, Grant.
I mean, I'm not expecting a whole lot out of.
You don't need to at 2.9K. I mean, a touchdown and a few catches, and you're off to the races at that price point. So
don't even need a touchdown. Honestly, 50 yards and 5 catches. I'll take 10 points out of a 2.9K guy.
Yeah, if you get a touchdown, Grant, 16. Come on, man. Come on, Jonnu.
Yeah. He can
Get in the
get you
end
there.
zone, Smith. What are your thoughts when it comes to like these running backs? Because like now they're like even mixing in like Patterson, and we know Indy is really bad against the run. Like, do we take shots on Bijan and hope that like Arthur Smith does the right thing here? I mean, I don't know.
It's so tough to figure out. I mean, I had Bijan's over on rushing yards last week, and then the first drive, I wanted to put my fist through the TV. I don't understand what they're doing. Like, it's so inconsistent. You play based on how many people are projected to play him. Like, that's kind of it. He has immense downside and immense upside. Crushed a lot of my lineups last week. I don't know how much I trust any of them. So it's strictly based, like if he's going to come in at 4% owned, then you roll the dice on him. It's that simple. It's a good matchup. But I'm probably staying away from Patterson, Algier. Both those guys are fine, but not really giving you the upside that Bijan is. I don't think Algier hasn't had more than 15 points since week 1. So it's not really worth taking a shot on him just because he's cheap. There's cheap spots other places. So if you're going to go anywhere, you go Bijan, and strictly based on how many other people are playing him, which wouldn't surprise me for him to go entirely unowned because he put up 1 point last week.
Yeah, he's currently projected for 8% on our first run like projected ownership, and I think that entices me to play him a little bit in this matchup. So if he stays in that like under like 12% range, I'll probably have some exposure to him. Like at like probably like at the like 15 to 20% mark on like a 20-inch max build. Oh, Green Bay at Carolina, Grant. This game here. 36 and a half total. Yeah, Green Bay, 4.5-point favorite here. I mean, these two defenses have not been spectacular. Like Green Bay's defense has just been terrible against the pass and run, but like we haven't seen anything outside of Carolina. But talk to me here about Green Bay. Anything standing out to you here?
I mean, I don't love anything. I mean, the prices on Dobbs and Wicks aren't bad. I mean, obviously, Carolina, you can attack them through the air easier than on the ground. No, sorry, on the ground easier through the air. So maybe Aaron Jones, honestly, hoping for that big outing that we see once, twice a year. Got some decent run last week. Maybe Wicks, maybe Dobbs. Like, honestly, probably my favorite play on Green Bay is going to be Kraft. He's kind of stepped into that Musgrave role, running a ton of routes and on more snaps than Musgrave was, just because they don't have anyone else to really throw in there for him. Had a touchdown last week. He's been getting 4 to 6 targets every single week. He's cheap at 3.7K. I know we want to pay up at tight end, but Kraft could be overlooked. I think he's probably the best play in this offense.
I'm actually with you. He's one of the cheap tight ends that I wrote down this week, and he's not even necessarily that cheap anymore, but he's cheap enough where, I mean, Watson doesn't look like promising to play. Jalen Reed has been banged up, and then he left the game last week with a toe injury, didn't come back. Wicks is banged up right now, dealing with an ankle sprain. I mean, Dobbs at 5,300, if all those guys sit, very playable. Malik Heath at 3,200, like if all those guys sit, you could take some shots on Heath at 3,200 just because he's so incredibly cheap. But Kraft is the guy that I like, and honestly, Aaron Jones, Dillon, they're both banged up too. If they were to sit, you could play some Patrick Taylor, but just weird scenario where like half the team for Green Bay is questionable coming into the week. The Carolina side, the only reason that I have some interest in Kraft and potentially it's like some of these pass catchers is because I actually have a lot of interest in Hubbard here. You know, at least 22 carries in all 3 games since the new coach has taken over. If he gets in the end zone once or twice, he just crushes because he's going to get the carries. Green Bay's run defense has been awful. I like Chuba Hubbard in this game. What do you like here for Carolina?
Yeah, that's kind of it. I mean, Thielen, you can always take a shot on. I know he hasn't done a ton since like week 4 or 5 or 6, whatever it was. Just hasn't quite been the same guy he was for the 4 or 5 week span where he's getting 10 plus targets every week. Hasn't had more than 7 in any of the past 4 weeks, I think. Like, I don't want to play Mingo. I don't want to play Chark. Definitely don't want to play Bryce Young. Don't want to play the tight end situation, so it's kind of Hubbard. I mean, Hubbard is getting the volume, like he said. The matchup is actually pretty solid going up against the Packers, who have been bad versus the run this season. Hubbard can get 100 yards getting into the end zone. I mean, Carolina is probably just going to try and grind this game out on the ground like they do most weeks. Hope to keep it close and maybe win at the end of the game. Hubbard, probably too cheap at 5.7K. He's the only guy I really have interest in.
Yeah, I think Mingo at 3,600 is still like playable just because like he seems to be into this wide receiver one role, but this game is going to be a let's try to run the clock as much as possible game. So I don't know necessarily what type of ceiling we're looking at on Jonathan Mingo. So, I want to play Adam Thielen, like especially like seeing the targets start back up. So maybe some Adam Thielen here. But I mean, I'm not. I'll be honest. I'm not going crazy about this game. We have a lot of great games on this slate, and this is just not one of them. The other one, right back to back, baby. Here we go. Cleveland at Houston, 40.5 total in this game. Cleveland a 2.5 point favorite. We did get news that like it's doubtful that CJ Stroud is back this week with the concussion. Let's talk Cleveland first. Joe Flacco, he's thrown at least 44 times in 3 straight games. Joe Flacco airing it out for Cleveland. And I was reading a thing the other day about how like Flacco can make up to like $3 or $4 million depending on like if Cleveland makes the playoffs and how far they go in the playoffs. So I think that's really interesting. What do you like here for Cleveland?
I have more interest in this game than you do, I think, and I
was semi joking because
it's going to be. Yeah, you're right. It is going to be an ugly game. It is absolutely going to be ugly, and it is interesting seeing Cleveland's home road splits on the season. I think they're giving up like 170 yards per game at home compared to 300 yards on the road. So playing in a dome over in Texas, like that's kind of a big thing, and I have a lot of interest in Amari Cooper and Njoku. Like both of them been really solid with Flacco under center. Flacco has shown that, like you said, 40 plus pass attempts last few weeks. Njoku just a ridiculous amount of targets and high value targets over the last few weeks. I like this stack. It's not terribly expensive. Cooper is the most expensive at 6.4K, but you can get all of them for just over 16K. Like all three of those guys, we know that the pass volume has been there. I mean, I know Moore had that week with the 12 targets, didn't do a ton with them. I think Cooper might have gotten injured in that game. It's Cooper, it's Njoku, it's Flacco, and I really like that stack.
Yeah, it's such an interesting like double stack because like it's first of all it's 2023 and we're talking about playing Joe Flacco and we're talking about double stacking Cleveland, but I mean honestly it's been working
against Case Keenum.
I mean man, what a disappointment here towards the end of the season for this Houston team. They looked like they were gonna be like this shocker sleeper potential team, and a lot of injuries down the stretch kind of stinks for them. But yeah, I have a ton of interest, and like Ford and Hunt are both banged up right now. So like it just makes me want to lean on Flacco and these pass catchers even more in this one. I don't even think I'm going to play anybody else. I think it's Njoku and Cooper with or without Flacco for me in this spot. And then on the Houston side of things, like Case Keenum, I mean, he beat Tennessee last week, if you want to call it that. What do you like here for the Texans?
Yeah, it's kind of tough. Like, I'd rather just roll with Flacco in any game stack. Keenum's cheap at 4.9K, and I know that Cleveland's defense, like I said, has been different on the road this season, and it's different in a dome. But Keenum, I'd just rather roll Flacco because I'm mostly stacking this game up. It all depends on if Collins ends up playing. If Collins ends up playing, then I still think he's very much in play. If not, Noah Brown is not a terrible option. You can even go Hutchinson at min price if you really want to throw someone else in, but the volume hasn't been great. Woods, I don't really want to play him. Brevin Jordan and Schultz are kind of eating into each other a little bit. So it's mostly, if I'm bringing it back, it's going to be Noah Brown if Collins doesn't play, Collins if he does play, and then Singletary's gotten just a hold of this run game. Pierce is kind of out. 5.5K. I mean, the Browns, solid run D, solid pass D, but it's in a dome. Singletary will get the volume, or has been getting the volume. Singletary is probably the only guy I really want to bring back, and it kind of works out well if you're assuming that Cleveland's going to be down. You can throw in Collins there or Noah Brown. Either of them will be the alpha if Collins does or does not end up playing. So on this side, just kind of Singletary, Collins, or Noah Brown, depending on if Collins plays. And then if you really want to throw in Schultz, that's fine. But there's too many other good tight ends on the slate. Unless no one's going to play him, then I might have some interest.
I think Noah Brown is playable with or without Collins in this game. Because I think if Collins comes back, he might even get an extra couple targets if they kind of focus on Collins on the outside. So I think Noah Brown is very much in play. He's crushed this season when he's been healthy. He's had plenty of games over 20 fantasy points. So love the Noah Brown call. I'm with you on Schultz. I think that there are so many good tight end plays this week that I just don't see myself getting to Schultz. So probably score 2 touchdowns. Washington at New York facing the Jets. 37.5 total in this game. The Jets are 3-point favorites. Let's start here with Washington. Man, this team looked awful. They have been awful. Back-to-back games now. Miami in week 13, then they were on bye, and they looked awful again against the Rams. Any interest here in Washington?
It's a tough matchup. I know Hal's put up some big numbers so far this season, but the Jets are just a tough one. A running game, I don't really want to trust anyone. They'll mix in guys, whoever ends up playing. The passing game, I mean, Samuel's not the worst play in the world at 4.8K, but probably don't want to go him. Logan Thomas, don't really want him. Jets just don't allow a ton of passing yards to opposing teams. They know to run against them more because Jets are way easier to attack on the ground. It's just an ugly, ugly spot here. I don't see myself playing any Washington players.
Yeah, I kind of like the Jets defense a lot. They're probably going to be my highest owned defense this week. If Brian Robinson ends up sitting, I think you could potentially take some shots on Gibson on DraftKings just for his pass work out of the backfield. And if you want to, Curtis Samuel, they draw up so many plays for him when it comes to unique plays. I think Curtis Samuel is always someone we want to get some exposure to in tournaments because they have so many red zone and goal line drawn up plays for Curtis Samuel. So Jets side of this game, first of all, we don't know who's going to play quarterback. Zach Wilson, concussion protocol. I would kind of have interest in Zach Wilson in this game if he were going to play. Washington defense is terrible. Trevor Siemian is awful. Not saying Zach Wilson's much better, but if Zach Wilson clears concussion protocol, the Wilson combo is cheap, and I probably get some exposure to that combo here.
Oh, yeah, I have a lot of interest. The Commanders' defense is so bad versus the pass. The amount of massive scores they put up. I know it's tough to pull the trigger on Zach Wilson or Siemian. I don't really care who starts. I'll play Garrett Wilson regardless.
Yeah.
But I'll probably stack him with Siemian or Wilson. We got a lot of cheap quarterbacks on this slate that a 4.8K Zach Wilson or Siemian, I think, is right around the same price range. He can put up a decent game. He put up 23 points 2 weeks ago. Commanders' defense is much, much worse. Garrett Wilson will be the focal point. And if he has a big game, Zach Wilson probably has a big game. And this is the spot for him to have a big game. So whoever ends up starting, I'm probably playing that quarterback. It's going to be ugly, but the Washington defense is just so bad. And then if you want to throw in Breece Hall, go ahead. He'll get some receiving game work. Decent chance the Jets are leading in this game. But this offense is so concentrated, and it's such a bad defense for the Commanders that you kind of have to have interest in all these guys.
Yeah, I like the Breece Hall call. Washington's defense is awful. So, you could could stack Jets and Jets defense and Breece Hall in this spot if you want to. But I mean, don't sleep on the Jets defense. We know how much Sam Howell likes to get sacked. This could be a like 5+ sack spot for the Jets defense. That turns into interceptions and fumbles. So really like the Jets defense here. I got nothing else for this one. We're moving on. I like this next game a lot. It's Jacksonville at Tampa Bay. It has a 43.5 total. Tampa is a 1.5 point favorite. I know that Trevor Lawrence is in concussion protocol, but he practiced limited or didn't practice Wednesday with the concussion protocol. But we'll see. I mean, I really want him to play because this is a great spot. Let's talk Jags first. Lawrence is in. I have a ton of interest in Ridley, Ingram, Zay Jones if he plays. If Zay Jones is out, Washington at 3,800 becomes interesting. Like, you got to beat Tampa through the air, and they have been awful against the pass.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much summed it up perfectly. And even if Lawrence doesn't end up playing, I still have some interest in Zay Jones. Zay Jones will still get solid volume. Like, he hasn't done great so far with Kirk out, but he's still a big red zone target. Like, people forget that he was up there in the lead of red zone targets last year, and even in limited games this year, I think he's still second or third. Yeah, it's Zay Jones is probably my favorite of the bunch. If he doesn't end up playing, then Parker, we saw what he did when Kirk went out. He's going to get some volume. He got 6 targets last week, didn't do much with him, but he's a guy that can get there, and 3.8K is too cheap. Ingram and Ridley are fine. Like, if you want to go for Fournette, or not Fournette, he hasn't played there in years. ETN, he's fine too, but I kind of want to attack through the air, and if Beathard's in there, then I'm fine with that too. Like, he'll be cheap, and Zay Jones and Ingram or Zay Jones and Ridley is a cheap double stack.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sleep on ETN just because of like how much he's on the field. I could see playing some ETN in this spot because like he's 6,600. That's a really fair price tag for a guy that's capable of like 30+ fantasy points. So I'm with you. I like the passing attack here a lot more. And we got a question, Agnew in chat. Like, Zay Jones would have to miss for me to actively want to play Agnew. He would have to be out. Like, they're gonna use Washington a lot more from what we've seen recently. So Zay Jones out, I could maybe get to Agnew, but I still think I'd get to Washington for $400 more. Tampa side of this game, Jacksonville has been awful against the pass. They're allowing 271 passing yards per game this season. Like, Baker Mayfield absolutely lit up Green Bay last week. 33 fantasy points. He threw for 4 touchdowns. Mike Evans is the guy here when it comes to the red zone, but we finally saw Chris Godwin show up. This is back-to-back double-digit target games. Is this something we're betting on? We're looking at? Like, do we believe in Chris Godwin resurgence? I mean, I think we could play both of these guys.
Yeah, I think you can play both of them. I have a massive lean towards Evans because of the recency bias with Godwin. We've seen massive numbers out of Evans so many times this season. Like, I could see playing 30% of him, honestly. Like, outside of one game in the past 7 weeks, I think, 6 weeks, he's been fantastic and getting a touchdown in 5 of the last 6 games. Like, he's the red zone guy. He's a big play guy. He is Baker's favorite target, and he consistently goes a little bit under-owned. Evans is by far my favorite target. And then, of course, Rachaad White just keeps putting up big numbers. Like, the volume has been absolutely fantastic. We always talk about getting a workhorse back. He has been getting 25 touches pretty much every single week. And I think that continues here. I know the Jags are better versus the run, but we've seen him put up pretty decent numbers against tough matchups too. So White, Evans, probably the 2 guys to go with. I don't know if I'm playing Baker. I'll have to wait and see on how many people are going to play Godwin, but Evans and White, I'm playing regardless.
White has been phenomenal this season. I think he's been one of the biggest surprises just overall his volume. Right now, we have Godwin projected for 5% and Evans projected for 10%. I think that shifts throughout the week. I hope this game doesn't game steam. I love this game if it doesn't game steam. And like the thing that I love about this game is like, especially if Lawrence plays, like, I mean, it just has so much shootout potential because like both of these defenses have been struggling. So yeah, I like this game a lot more than I probably should, but we'll see what happens. Arizona at Chicago, 43.5 total in this game. Chicago, 4.5-point favorite. We'll start here with Arizona. Chicago's defense has actually been playing really solid. They made some moves there at the trade deadline. Any interest here in Arizona?
McBride, obviously. Like McBride's volume has just been absolutely incredible. Yeah, McBride, I'm fine with playing Kyler. Like, he can always put up a big game, but that Bears defense has been really good, and Kyler just hasn't been rushing as much as I'd hoped. Receiving game, anyone. Like, I don't really.
I mean, Brown and Dortch are both hurt now. Like,
I know, but it's like it just screams more McBride. I've been playing Michael Wilson a lot, and I've been playing Rondale Moore a lot this season, and it's not working out. Like, I get Brown and Dortch potentially being out. I mean, they're cheap. Like, people are going to flock to them. Like, I have to assume they're going to be heavily played, but I don't know. Like, I've just been burnt by them so much that it's kind of tough to play them.
Oh, I agree with you. I think if both Brown and Dortch sit, we have to take some shots on Michael Wilson just because like his ceiling. But like Trey McBride has at least 9 targets in 4 of the last 5 games. He's the guy. I mean, this is like Travis Kelce type workload at $2,000 cheaper. I mean, so Trey McBride continues to be a top tight end each and every slate. I think James Conner is an okay play under 6K. You know, he has a goal line role and he never comes off the field. I mean, this is a guy that's going to get pass work when they're down. He's going to get the carries if they're up. He's just not going to come off the field. So I think James Conner is okay at 5,900. He's not my favorite play, but he's okay. On the Chicago side, we know how bad this Arizona defense is. Is this a week we unleash the DJ Moore, Justin Fields stack?
Yeah, or Cole Kmet, Justin Fields. Like, I have no problem with either of them. I know Moore is a little bit expensive. Kmet's probably priced where he should be. I love all 3 of them, though. Like, Fields might be my favorite QB play. I don't care if you play Fields naked. Like, this Cardinals defense is so bad. I know that Fields didn't have a big game last week, but prior to that, he was rushing a ton in every single game. He threw the ball, can't even remember how many times, threw the ball a lot last week. This is not going to be a matchup.
Terrible last week, though, too, in that game.
Yeah, well, he also was against Cleveland in Cleveland, which, again, I don't understand why that's a thing, but I could see Fields getting 100 rushing yards in this spot. He's going to be rushing more. Like, prior to last week, 12, 18 rush attempts, 8 rush attempts and a half, and before he got injured, 11. Like, they're letting him run. They just didn't run last week because it was against a tough Cleveland team. And anyone on the D-line could just crush him. This is not the same matchup. This is against the Cardinals. Cardinals near the bottom of the league in run D and pass D. They're not good at covering guys. They're not going to get that much pressure on him. Fields is going to be scrambling. So if you want to play him naked, that's fine. If you want to play him with Kmet, that's fine. If you want to play him with Moore, that's fine. I will be playing a lot of Justin Fields. Probably staying away from the running game, not touching Mooney. I've sworn off playing pretty much anyone but the main 3 guys over in Chicago at this point.
Man, Fields had Mooney on a deep ball last week and just overthrew him. That would have been a huge touchdown. But I love DJ Moore in this spot. I'm with you in the running game. They're using Johnson, Foreman, and Herbert. I don't think we could touch these guys with all 3 guys getting snaps and carries. So DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, Justin Fields. I think you can kind of just summarize Chicago by playing the main pieces here in a phenomenal matchup against Arizona. I know someone posted in YouTube chat that I missed the Tennessee game. I wrote it down weird. We're going back to the 1:00 game. Seattle at Tennessee. 41.5 total here. Seattle is a 2.5-point favorite. Geno Smith expected to be a full go for this game after Drew Lock beat Philadelphia on Monday night.
A beautiful game.
What a beautiful. If no one knows, Grant is a Seattle Seahawks fan.
Well, not only that, I had the Seahawks money line, I had JSN over, and I had Metcalf over. All three of which hit in the last drive.
Yeah, those are the perfect. Well, I mean, perfect ones hit in the first quarter. What do you like here for Seattle?
I mean, Kenneth Walker. I know that Tennessee's a tough run defense. They've been worse for the second half of the season, but they're really a pass funnel, and so like people might shy away from Walker. As of right now, we have him projected for like 26%, in which case that's probably a stay away for me. But JSN been getting a boatload of targets, still only 4.5K. Metcalf been better in recent weeks, always a 30-plus point upside in any given week, especially versus a pass funnel. This game should be close. I'm mostly rolling with JSN and Metcalf. Lockett's fine. If no one's going to play him, I will. But my order of guys I want to play is probably Metcalf, JSN, Walker, and then Lockett. I don't mind throwing Geno Smith in there if you want, but I'm going to have a lot of pieces of Metcalf or JSN.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know if I want to play Geno. I think there's a lot of great tight or quarterback plays this week. I mean, I think GSN above Lockett, Metcalf above both of them, and Walker somewhere in between, depending on ownership. If Walker is going to be chalk, I have no problem not playing Walker here. Against a tough Tennessee run defense. Tennessee's run defense continues to be really strong. So if Walker is going to be chalky, I'll probably pass. Tennessee side, I mean, I hate playing this team. But I think we just got to continue to respect like the amount of targets Hopkins is getting. They're not the greatest targets in the world, but they're there. Levis is dealing with an ankle injury. I mean, Tannehill, if Levis can't play, he's going to start here. What are we looking at with the Titans?
Just Hopkins and maybe Henry. Like, I want to see how many people play him, but we've seen Henry's workload based on if the team's winning or close or not changes drastically. The spread's sitting at 2.5 for this game. It's probably going to be a close one. Seahawks run D has been great. Derrick Henry, I know D. Hember has been a little bit different this year, especially the last 2 weeks. It's been rough. But he gets the volume. He's going to get the red zone roll. Still in a close game, will get 20-plus carries. He can always break off a big one. Henry, I think, is in play for tournaments, and Hopkins just based on volume. I'm not playing Levis. I'm not playing Tannehill. It's not really a difference between who starts. Like, I'm not sure which one's actually better. And I mean, they're behind a banged up O-line, and Levis might be good at some point, but he's not in the right situation right now. It's literally just Henry or Hopkins, and Henry's probably a guy that I'll go with if I'm bringing it back with JSN or Metcalf. It's kind of a good corollary stack.
Yeah, I mean, I wish they'd give Tajay Spears more touches because, I mean, I feel like Tajay Spears has the most ceiling between the two of them right now. Henry gets those like 1-yard touchdowns, and I throw stuff because I hate playing Derrick Henry right now. I mean, if Tannehill starts here, does he come out chucking like, hey, you know, I still want to play quarterback in the NFL, and we see Hopkins have a big game? I mean, that's the only thing that I'm kind of hoping for here. I don't want to play a Kongwu. I think that like we just have so many great tight end plays this week. So taking some shots on Hopkins is really it for me. With the loss last week for the Titans, they're basically eliminated from the playoffs here. They would need a lot of stuff to happen and to win out, and that's not going to happen. They suck. All right, game of the week. Dallas at Miami. My Cowboys continue to do their thing. Just kidding. I'm a Dolphins fan. 50.5 total here. Miami 1.5 point favorite. I was shocked to see Miami favored in this game. I mean, I don't necessarily hate it, Let's start here with Dallas. Just ultimate letdown last week against Buffalo. They looked awful. Dak looked terrible. Like, he had been playing at such a high clip, and like Buffalo just smashed him last week. What are we doing with Dallas here?
Well, I mean, both teams are terrible versus good teams. Don't know why, but they will just get crushed anytime. Dallas side of things, I mean, CeeDee Lamb getting massive amount of volume. I don't know. Like, I have a giant preference towards Tyreek Hill. Like, we mentioned so many cheap guys throughout the course of this podcast. It's because I want to go close to all in on Tyreek Hill. But Lamb, he's fine. He's expensive, but volume incredible. Ceiling, great. Potential pace of this game, it's going to be tough to play. I don't even know if it's possible to play Lamb and Hill and actually get a decent lineup, but everyone's so expensive. Like, I want to game stack this game, but it's going to be really tough to. I think Ferguson is a fine play, but tight end's so stacked. I don't know if he's in my top 4 or 5. Pollard just will always disappoint me. He had a good run for a couple of weeks. I don't know if there's a spot for him. Like, this is the game of the week. This is a fantastic matchup. This could be a 70-point game, and I'm having trouble trying to figure out who to play over on Dallas just because of their pricing.
I mean, I think it's CD and Cooks, and like potentially Dak, but I think cheap quarterback is the way that I'm leaning this week, just overall. There's so many good cheap quarterbacks, and like the cheap quarterbacks, like we talked about that Atlanta stack, and you brought up Jonnu. You could play Tyreek and CD in this game and have a Heineke, London, Jonnu stack, and your team actually looked pretty decent. So, I mean, gosh, yeah, CD's like volume is just so incredibly high right now that it's hard not to have exposure to him. Cooks has that like 30 to 50 yard touchdown upside, and that might come into play here in a really fast paced game. So I'll have some exposure to Cooks, but I think Ferguson is okay. Like you said, I mean, how can you not have interest in Turd Ferguson when you are Turd Ferguson? Miami side, I think Tyreek plays here. Like, I think he was really close to playing last week, and they're like, kind of shut it down because they need him healthy. I haven't been playing Tua. I know you've talked about it a lot on Action Network stuff. Tua's not running anymore, and with him not running, like, his upside is still somewhat limited. He can have that like 3 touchdown game and still not get 30 fantasy points. I think it's Tyreek. If Tyreek gets really, really chalky, maybe some Waddle. And then as far as the running backs, I mean, Mostert has 20 touchdowns this year. Like, this guy just scoring at such a high clip, but such a terrible matchup for him this game.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's tough with Achane in there. Like, again, the game of the week, people are going to try and play it, but it's just so tough to do because of pricing. I mean, Tyreek Hill is absolutely phenomenal play. Like, the guy should get right around 30 points. I don't care what the matchup is. Tyreek Hill will get schemed constantly if he ends up playing. I'm assuming he's playing. Waddle at 7.8K. I mean, last week he was solid, but for obvious reasons. Outside of that, he has 2 games over 20 points and he's 7.8K. I get this is going to be high scoring here, but I just don't know what to do about a 7.8K Tua, 7.8K Waddle, like 9.6K Tyreek, both running backs over 7K, and then the Dallas side, similar pricing. I just don't know how I'm going to build game stacks for this. And it's probably going to be just single guys, and Mostert and Tyreek Hill are the 2 guys I want to play. Waddle's fine. Not great, though. Achane's fine. Not great, though. They'll probably garner some ownership. Tua, fine, but not worth that price tag on this slate where you're trying to pay up and you want to pair him with Tyreek Hill. You're just kind of done for it after that. So, fantastic game, but realistically, the pieces I'm going with in this game are Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, maybe some Mostert, and that's kind of it. I think we could easily see this game be lower scoring because both these teams are moderately inept versus good teams, and both these teams are good. So I just want to play Hill.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I think Achane is always someone you can take shots on. I am a little bit worried about the toe, but I mean, they blew out the Jets last week, so we really just didn't get to see a lot from like Achane. Like, Waddle just absolutely smashed with no Tyreek last week. I think he had like 8 catches for I think 140 and a touchdown. So, and he had a long catch as well. He had a phenomenal game. So, if for some reason Tyreek sits, Jalen Waddle becomes one of the top plays on the slate for me. But I think Tyreek plays in this one. So, all right, that we broke it down. That's week 16 in a nutshell. Let's play the morning grind game, and then we'll get out of here. It's been a long time since we got to play the morning grind game with Grant. Quarterback for 300 plus passing yards. Who do you got?
I'm going Nick Mullins.
Whoa, I like it right out of the bat.
I mean, I don't care who's throwing to that receiving core. It's silly how good they are.
Oh no, I hear you. He has just one of the best receiving cores in the NFL. So with Hawkinson, Addison, and Jefferson, yeah. I'm gonna go Trevor Lawrence, hoping that he clears concussion protocol here because it's a phenomenal spot. It is early in the week. It is Wednesday night. Well, now Thursday morning on the East Coast. Ownership's going to shift, but give me a running back that you like for a touchdown that's low owned.
I'm going to go. This is tough. Who's low owned here? I'm probably going to go Derrick Henry. No, White's going to be low owned according to our projections. I'll go with White.
I don't mind that. I'm going to go Hubbard. I talked about how much I like him here. I hope that our projections are close on him. Quarterback, wide receiver stack for a touchdown.
I'm going to go DJ Moore and Fields.
I like that stack a lot. I hope that it goes overlooked this week. But yeah, I'm with you. I have a ton of interest in that stack. I'm going to go Heineke to Drake London. Drake London's so
Love
good.
it.
And he just winning individual matchups at such a high rate. Wide receiver for 8+ targets.
I mean, I'm not going to take the cheating ones in Hill or CeeDee Lamb. I'm going to go with Amari Cooper.
Oh, you took my guy. That's who I had written down. That throws me off. You know what? I'll go Garrett Wilson here.
I like it.
I like him too. Tight end for a touchdown. There are a lot of them this week.
Janu!
Oh, that's great. I hope he scores just for that. But I'm gonna go Njoku. I know it's kind of cheating, but I don't care. Defense for 10+ points. We didn't talk a lot about defenses this week. Who do you like for 10+ points?
This is outside of the obvious one, which is the Jets. Is a little bit tougher. I'm gonna go with Seattle.
Yeah, I don't hate that. I'm going to go the Bears. Chicago Bears defense has been really solid. Give me the Bears. And, I'm with you. The Jets, favorite defense this week. Not even close for me, but I'm going to go to Bears. All right, let's go to the betting portion of the morning grind. Give me an against the spread or money line bet that you like this week.
This is tough here. I'm going to go with Indy money line. I think it's saying at plus 130. Let me get the exact odds. I was checking pre-game, and I think that's what it was at. But they are it's close to even money now. All right, maybe I was looking at something wrong. All right, never mind. Then I'm going to go with Seahawks -2.5. I mean, Titans are not great. Seahawks obviously coming off a big win, which generally doesn't go great for betting the spread, but you can get it at 2.5. I wouldn't want it at 3, I don't think, but 2.5 is pretty solid.
Yep. Love getting that field goal in there. I'm with you on this one. I'm going to go Cleveland -2.5. I think that Case Keenum, not great. So I think Cleveland gets the job done this week with Joe Flacco. All right, let's go to an over-under bet. What do you like for an over-under this week?
I'm going with the Detroit, Minnesota. I think it's at 45.5 or 46.5. Yeah, 46.5. I'm rolling with the over.
Yep, over 46.5. It's 47 on the Hard Rock. I don't get that half a point. I wish I did. I'm going to go Jacksonville, Tampa over 42.5. This is 43.5 on most books, but for the Hard Rock, I get it at 42.5. So there you go. I get a point where you get a half a point. All right, give me a player prop that you like this week.
I'm going. This is a Saturday game, but this is what I have for right now since a lot of stuff isn't out yet or haven't had time to look into. But Diggs over 67.5 receiving yards. Diggs has not great over the last few weeks, but it's been really, really tough matchups for like 4 of the last 5 weeks. We saw what he was doing earlier on this season. Chargers, pass D is inept. We know the Bills will still throw the ball late in the game, even if they're up big. So Diggs, 67.5 receiving yards, too low.
I'm going to take this right now. I took his anytime touchdown prop anytime touchdown at plus money earlier today. I felt good about that. So I'm going to go. I locked this one in already as well. I got Hubbard over 71.5 rushing yards. We've talked about it a lot with the new coach. They're just kind of pounding the rock, and Hubbard's the guy. If he's going to get 20 carries against Green Bay, I like his chances to go over 71.5. He has run for at least 87 yards in 3 straight games. Pick'em play. I will look it up for you if you don't have one. Is there anything on the Pick'em prize picks or underdog that you like here?
I got nothing. I mean, probably what's Metcalf at?
I wrote this down as to look up because I like him as well. Let's see. It's so much faster to search. Hold on. Metcalf 64.5.
Yeah, I'll take that over.
All right, we'll go more than 64.5 on Metcalf, and then I will go more than 51.5 on Njoku's receiving yards here. So that is our morning grind 2-pick play for this week. More than 64.5 for Metcalf, and Njoku more than 51.5 is what we're going to lock in for the morning grind 2-pick play. Grant, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Nope, just making it through the end of foosball season.
Only a few more weeks, and then the playoffs. Hope everyone has a fantastic NFL Week 16. Appreciate Grant for filling in for Keith. Keith will be back next week. We'll be back next week as well, Week 17. Hope everyone has a great time, and we'll see you again